Hi friends, host Eric here, host Talking with Famous People, and I'm about to go to bed for four, 4 or 5 hours, but I wanted to make this video before I did because, well, first I need to say I'm sorry to Winston's mom. I'm sorry about that in the live stream. And it was an interesting conversation I had with Horseman, who called me, not as I anticipated, to tell me about some thing he had going on that he wanted to get off his chest or needed advice about or whatever. He called me to scold me. It's like, oh man, if I'd known you were calling me to scold me, I wouldn't have stopped the stream. Anyway, but I mean, it's not that I didn't deserve to be scolded, so it's fine. Uh, I'm sorry about yelling at you and stuff like that, and attributing to you, and having you play the role of, or the thing that I really didn't like, which has nothing to do with you at all. So, here's the deal. In thinking about this, what I realized is we can talk a lot about cognitive functions and about a person and how they are and who they are by discussing what people find offensive or what triggers them, right? It's very telling about their values. So, if we look at the interface and judge and deliberation functions, which are TEFE, FITI, it's really easy to convert those into what offends you. Like, I can't stand that, you know, these people are not caring about the way this plays, is being mad about somebody not upholding FE as an absolute value. These people are not caring about whether it's argumentationally correct, is somebody getting mad about TI things. These people are not caring about me, FI. These people, or that guy or whatever, is not caring about how he plans something out or something. I guess on TE grounds, it's a little more challenging to say. That person's not caring about my time. That person's not caring about being efficient. They're wasting time. They're wasting time and energy. They're doing things in a dumb way that's negatively impacting everybody. But TE does link to FI, so it's also negatively impacting me. Or getting outraged because that guy, those people just don't get it. They're not pulling the trigger when they need to pull the trigger here. I mean, you can't just sit around and dither forever. Sometimes you gotta take action. These people are offending the hell out of me because they're taking action before there's been adequate discussion. They're just bullying ahead, not caring what gets broken in the pathway because they're so sure of what they want to do, they don't care whether it's acceptable to do it or anything else, or what anybody else thinks, or what they don't care to listen to the arguments be played out, right? So if somebody gets offended by a party or a perceived failure to hear out all the discussion and hear out all the ideas about things, that's getting offended about NE, you know? If somebody gets offended about relevancy, you're refusing to factor in what's most important here and most relevant and talking about things that are irrelevant, you know, that's getting offended about a failure to uphold NI as an absolute value. So, anyway, if these people are just not even paying any attention to the level of experience of the person, this is, we need an experienced person here. That would be an SI kind of getting offended, you know. And you could frame each of those in different ways. Getting offended when second party does it to third party, getting offended when second party does it to you, or you could get it. You could frame it getting offended when well, I mean, you're really it's gonna be agent or object, right? Either when it happens to you or when you observe it happening. Not really when you do it, right? So, anyway, Horseman and I were talking about these informational triggers, as he called them, which I kind of interpreted initially to mean sometimes, Eric, you get triggered by somebody bringing you information you don't want to know. And I said, that's really only you, Horseman. Nobody else really, that doesn't ever happen any time. There's occasions, particularly. But regardless, my gears are grinding to a halt with an overwhelming amount of things to really intuit about. I have too many matters of significance, significant interest in front of me at the moment, and I can't keep processing on one line because I keep being drawn from thing to thing in my own head while I'm trying to talk, and I'm tired, and etc. So the point is, sorry this is such a terrible video. Somehow acknowledging that it is makes it okay. I don't know. No, it doesn't, Eric. You should really start it over. But I'm not going to because I need to go to bed and I want to finish saying what I'm saying. And I'm just having a hard time saying it. My point is this. One of the things, what happened, something that offends me, one way to put it is, I get mad when people don't care about things at the right time. And when I was yelling at Winston's mom, I was putting onto her the role of somebody making arguments she was just talking about, right? She wasn't making them, she was just talking about them. And I misread a couple of things, and I got a little triggery because what's going to trigger me? What's going to trigger me is people, but in general, people talking about things at the wrong time. Because it doesn't validate on NI grounds. So timing is a form of relevance. And the reason I'm like that is because it's like what I told when I was working for Jeffrey's mom and family to try to get them their PayPal money back. It was a huge struggle because half of the battle was getting the ESTJ mom to stop, to let me have sufficient room to operate. Every time I said something conditionally or speculatively as something that might be done, she took it much more concretely than I ever meant it. And eventually I had to say to her, look, you don't understand why I'm the best person to choose to do this. Because I enter into this operation with the assumption that if this gets past the talking part, it's over. I've lost. I'm not gonna win that part. If we're going past talking, then we're moving into TESE territory, and I'm not gonna win that part. And that's why I don't make threats either, if you parse my language carefully. But I indicate things that in theory could happen, you know? And the ESTJ mom really battled with me throughout this whole process until I explained that to her. What I say might happen is not something that we're going to do. Or if you're going to do it, I won't be part of it anymore because I'm not into doing things. I shouldn't have to do things if I successfully can have a conversation with somebody long enough. Then it should never end in me having to do things. Because if both parties are capable of having an honest conversation, I won't be advocating the wrong thing. I'm only advocating it all for some reason that's totally good reason, legitimate. And and the fact that if you're any kind of organization, I'm going to talk to multiple individuals. Somebody's going to be reasonable enough, if I'm right. And since I'm talking to multiple individuals, I'll have multiple attempts at the play. I can try several different approaches, you know? Maybe one blustery, one, what's that word? Supplicantish, you know? Play the FE different ways. And sure enough, it worked out. I got the running back. And I battled the mom the whole time, trying to tell her, fucking back off and let me do my job here, you know? You don't know what you're doing. That's why you asked me to do this for you. And you were right to do that. You're good at figuring out who you know that's the best choice to do this thing, probably. But you have no idea why, apparently. So, you know. Anyway, the point of this is, what happened tonight with Liz's mom is a phenomenon that is, I'm being triggered by the reality, again and again, of things that people start talking about when it's too late to start talking about it. So, I talked about Ukraine for years prior to any of this shit happening, right? Explaining what needed to be done, why they needed to be included in NATO, how the Minsk protocols were failed, and if they weren't, that Russia was going to invade them and take them over. When we needed to have that conversation was then. Once shit starts happening, happens, that's when I've lost, right? It's too late now. Why are we talking about it now? Like, why is everybody freaking out now that Roe v. Wade is being, considered to be overturned maybe or whatever, when the issue of whether it ought to be and under what conditions some equivalent might be established to replace it and attain the same outcome, whether or not that was desirable and stuff, needed to be resolved many years ago. So I've resolved all the arguments on the issue, like literally every possible argument chain on the issue, years ago. So, and I've explained it on the internet many times. Now, nobody listens to me. Now, here we have this abortion thing going on in the Supreme Court, and everyone wants to talk about it. It's like, it's too late now. We haven't done any of the pre-work. It's like, how can you talk about, people talk about the Supreme Court making a decision and what it's going to mean, and they haven't even resolved the issue of what's the correct position on it and why. And note, I'm not telling you what the correct position is. I'm just saying, at least legally, constitutionally, they could establish a right to abortion independent of any other right, and it might make some sense. It would make sense as a civic right that the Supreme Court can intelligently, rationally justify claiming by the 10th Amendment. The right to privacy doesn't exist and can't exist in any meaningful understanding of the word right. And the Supreme Court justices who made the decision on Roe v. Wade must have known this. It's not, the right to privacy. I mean, I guess people get confused a lot because a civil right is different than a right, So a civil right is one established by a government, and 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 the justification for your right to meow, or whatever it is one of it's considered implicit to the integrity of the system, right? Like the right to vote. There's no inherent right to vote. It's not a natural right. It's not even a naturally occurring phenomenon that people are necessarily going to vote on things, right? But a right to privacy. Ooh, you can't call that a civil right. There's no way, And there's just about any other way you put it would be more correct. A right from intrusive observation would even be preferable, even though that wouldn't be correct either. But the right to be free from, yeah, is a better way to put it. The right to privacy implies a whole slew of totally wrong case law cascades. And it is an absolute intellectual disaster. Whatever you think about abortion or whatever, it doesn't matter, okay? That's irrelevant. The point is, don't come talking to me now. Not Winston's mom or anybody in particular. But this is why I get triggered. Is this what I think? It's like, don't come talk to me now about it. I've explained many times before everything that needed to be understood and known about this. And so, at least 10 years ago, this should have been overturned, and probably overturned after a discussion of whether or not it ought to be replaced with something else that does the equivalent. Because regardless of, if you, let's say you definitely want to keep abortion as a federally named, in case law, right, established by the Supreme Court, you can still do that. But you got to do it about something that is actually makes sense as a right of some sort. At least if you appeal to the 10th Amendment, you can say it's a civil right. But a generalized right to privacy it's somebody dropped a 15-ton balloon full of diarrhea on the intellectual infrastructure. It's a fucking disaster of an idea entirely across the board. And I don't want to go into a lot of detail about why, except to simply say any right to privacy implies an obligation to comply, an obligation to obey any other individual's command to stop looking at them. Other people don't control my observation, and I don't control theirs. We have privacy. It stems from our property rights, whether they are attained via ownership or via renting or whatever, that we have a space that we can legitimately claim authority over. And then we can, when people violate our privacy, then what they're actually doing is breaking and entering. If you leave your blinds open and they look through your window and they're outside and they're not, let's just say they're not even like creeping or whatever, they're just taking a walk down the street and looking around, and they look in your window and you're standing there in front of an open window, like no blinds, and you're in the nude, you really can't complain about that person who sees you, right? And if they see you and they go, oh, and they look at you for a while, you might have cause to complain about, I wish people weren't so perverted or something. But you can't blame him or her, whoever it was who was looking, for seeing you, or try to confer onto them some duty to look away. That's why you have curtains, motherfucker. Anyhow, So it's ultimately a timing thing for me, right? It's I expect discourse to resolve things, provided the discursive parties are doing their job right. So at least 10 years before the start of Black Lives Matter, when nobody thought there was even a problem that I could tell. I'd put posts on Facebook bemoaning the state of affairs, the militarization of the police, the skyrocketing rates of violent encounters with law enforcement of some sort, use of force in general, and obviously I wasn't stupid, so I included all instances. I'd post things about this individual of indeterminate race whose skin was very dark, and this individual of indeterminate race whose skin was very light. Because I recognized what the actual fucking problem was, which had nothing to do with race, right? It had everything to do with police entitlement, a broken legal system in terms of holding its own accountable, and a variety of other things which I articulated in full. But nobody listened to me when it was time to listen to me. Then they want to talk about it later. I'm just like, I don't want to talk about this now. It's too late now. You know, the same thing with COVID, right? Yeah, that was a quick turnaround time frame wise. It's like I told everybody, this is fucking horrible, but everybody's panicking like this and shit. This alarmist bullshit. This over response, this lack of consideration of what would be a proportional response, this total absence of any discussion about what comprises the appropriate seizure of individual autonomy by the community and how much control other people ought to have over what I do with my face. And like, there were no discussions about principles, right? None. And so I was explaining, this is why this is all bullshit. Here's some bad methodology, and there's things here that the alarmism here over a 4% fatality rate is alarmism that's over an actually 0.4% fatality rate, which I was proven correct. I said this before anybody else in the world said it. I shit you not. Even though it was bone-numbingly obvious that if you're only testing the most sick people with multiple pre-existing conditions in one of the oldest and sickest countries in the world, Italy, that just because your pile of oily rags and hay has made a big fire doesn't mean it was started with a flamethrower. So I pointed out the methodology flaws here. I said, we're talking about at least one order of magnitude lower fatality rates. I said it, and I didn't hear anybody else say it, including people who were listening to me. I didn't even hear them repeat it back in any way. Until some 6 months later, when the mainstream media very quietly said, well, actually the fatality rate's like 0.4%. So, you know, by the time people started objecting to this ridiculous, animalistic stupidity of alarmism run amok, they need to listen to me before choosing that course of action, not after choosing that course of action. And once the action's taken, I've already lost. It's all over. That's why I get ahead of this shit. You know? That's why I say 6 years before Ukraine happens exactly what we need to do about Ukraine. How we need to include them in NATO, get rid of the Minsk protocols, and afford, with Putin's looming threat, afford them the increased amount of protection that being an actual treaty member provides them. And it obviously does provide a very much increased amount of protection, because if it didn't, the U.S. wouldn't have fought so hard to prevent them from getting into NATO back when they were trading their nukes for what was definitely, for what should have been worth getting into NATO. Because as we can see what happens when you don't have your nuclear deterrent. So, I mean, I said all this fucking half a dozen years before even Donetsk and Luhansk were sabotaged, is the best way to put it. Underhanded war, sabotage kind of shit is what happened there first. Then Putin went to Crimea. Then he went to Ukraine. It's like, I already had all of this explained fucking half a dozen years ago. Now, it's too late to talk to me about it now. You need to listen to me way back then. But of course, this is a fantasy world that I'm living in. It's not other people's responsibility to listen to me, right? And they don't like me usually because I talk like I'm the gauge of all knowing. I know what's right, and everybody else knows what's wrong. And what an asshole who would do that. I mean, who but the world's most conceited, self-important asshole would say it and act like those things? You know, well, me is who. I'm not the world's most conceited, self-important, and inflated asshole at all. And it's also true that I'm uniquely, incredibly right about everything. I'm as shocked as everybody else, okay? It's very much a corollary to when I became a director of a school. Prior to which I had been a teacher, right? When I was a teacher, I had a director over me, vice principal, because it was a full, whatever, same position basically. So the thing is, when I was a teacher, I was always stressing about not doing good enough work. I could get fired any moment here, you know, because I'm doing such a shitty job. Then I became a director, and I was like, oh my God. The quality of work that other people do is so much worse than my worst work. What the fuck was I worrying about? Well, I mean, this is where I am now about being right. I used to have the same kind of doubts that anybody does about it. Like, I mean, I was like, well, you know, I'm right about this, right about that. I didn't ever position myself as this guy who had some special claim on correctness or something. That's not how I ever operated. I was much more relativist than that usually. As a debate coach, it wasn't about being right or wrong. It was about what's going to win this round, you know? And because a lot of times, argumentation in debates, it comes down to the timing. It's, you have a 4-minute speech, let's say. You need an argument that's got a small enough number of moving parts that you can articulate it all, that's got a clear enough identity as an argument block that it crystallizes well into kind of like introverted intuition stuff. So you don't necessarily pick the best arguments in life. You pick the best arguments available in for the context, right? Sometimes you throw time sucks in there. You put in some block of Zizek, knowing that it means nothing, putting a tag on it that says something that does mean something, and pretending that these words that are also found in the text down here indicate and justify your claiming that tag for that card. Because it's a time suck. Your opponent then has to go through this fucking thing and figure out where you're bullshitting them. So yeah, you do that kind of stuff in debate. But I don't do that kind of stuff on YouTube or in life. You know, it's like a boxer, right? They might rope a dope in a boxing round, fool their opponent and win, and try to knock them out. Whereas, let's say in a real world encounter, they might try to just restrain them and so that nobody gets hurt, you know? Well, but yeah, that's why I get triggered by things. It links back to cognitive function values is where I'm going with this, which is it invalidates on my fifth slot, my absolute value for the external world. It invalidates on my first slot because of Eric's fantasy world, where once he's said things, then they're on the flow and have been said and should be understood by everybody. And it doesn't validate on my FE levels because it's not pleasant. It's not a pleasant conversation topic. The thing I hate the most, probably, just from an avoidance, distaste perspective rather than an offended perspective, but is I hate watching the horrible shit I predicted happen. I hate it. I don't stand there and watch it. As soon as Ukraine went hot, I fucking said, do not look at the news. Because it makes it worse for me. It's like, it just makes me mad. Not so much mad at Putin as mad at everybody else. Because, after all, I explained all this a long time ago. But yeah, so it's weird. It's really weird and challenging and difficult being I guess some kind of outlier. I don't find that easy to believe at all. Like, deep down, I kind of still have lingering belief in IQ, and I know I don't have a particularly high IQ. I like to say it's 107 because I tested on this one particular IQ test that had no words on it. It was all visual pattern recognition. I got a 107. So I like to say that's my IQ score. But full disclosure, honesty kind of thing has required me to say it's probably more like 130. High 120s. I don't know. But sub-genius for sure, you know, by IQ standards. Now, you'll hear me shit on the IQ test is basically meaningless. On plenty of occasions. As, at best, a haphazard assemblage of things that link very clearly to specific cognitive functions, things that link vaguely to cognitive functions, certain specific cognitive functions, things that link directly to a certain pairing of cognitive functions. You know, it's like, it's a mishmash of different, like, it might break down your IQ test and tell you, here's your verbal reasoning score. And that would be very closely linked to TI. But other things are are a little less clear cut than that, you know. Regardless, I want to stress that I find this hard to believe too. Who wouldn't find it hard to believe? I've spent, now maybe just I'm in the wrong place, right? I'm not in a place where there are a lot of intellectuals really hanging out all my time on YouTube. So, you know, to call yourself, as I did in the previous video, the smartest man on YouTube, smartest man on YouTube, I think I put, was the title of it. I was thinking about it. I remember at the time being very careful about how I wanted to word it. But I think most precisely I should have said smartest male YouTuber. Because, like, I know people who are smarter than me on YouTube. I just don't know them as YouTubers, right? I know them as commenters and stuff. Like, I can point to several INTPs who I think are clearly smarter than me in the sense of they score better on an IQ test for sure. But it's, you know, YouTube is a shocking wake-up call in a lot of ways. Continually, on an ongoing basis, it's periodically splashing hot and cold water in my face. It's a wake-up call in the sense that with the inclusion of shorts, the linkage between effort and outcome is very weak, which is strange, you know. My most successful short on Mindy's Club, which is 8,000 and some, was just this swimmer sitting here and this other doll sitting here, and he goes, "Look at you, you're swimming. All right." That's it. You know, it took a couple of minutes total time from filming to editing to uploading. And concurrently, this morning, before I finished, I put together this one long form video from which I intended to cut out, and did eventually cut out, the Mindy's Club shorts that I had made at this gas station trip. But I looked at the long form and I said, hey, you know, this plays pretty well as like a 2 minute and 12-second long form video. But of course, what happens is I put that up on the main channel, because I don't do long form videos on Mindy's Club, and it gets 39 views in 9 hours. Then 9 hours later, I see Rachel petting the kitty, and it's looking really cute, so I get up with the phone, and I'm like, oh, luxurious loves, oh, so wonderful, or something like that. Put that up, go inside the kitchen, and see that 9 hours ago, I put up a video that I spent a lot of time working on, comparatively. Hours at least, okay? And it gets 39 views in 9 hours. It's a video that has, like, creative energy to it. Whether you think it's good or not is another question. That's been thought about, crafted as part of some kind of a vision. And it doesn't matter at all, right? It's like, that one still got 39 views. I go into the kitchen 21 minutes after I post the kitty one. It's already got hundreds of views. You know, it's a 15-second, it's not even 15 seconds, it's like 9 seconds of Rachel petting the cat. So, this is a strange world to live in which effort and success are so weakly linked, like almost inversely linked. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes effort links to success, but mostly what links to success in YouTube or in Media Town in general, I'd say, is introverted intuition, concision, clarity, purposed, singularly purposed, easily digestible, not too many words, single concept, just bam. I got the other day on the main channel, I was sitting in the car and I accidentally had my phone on. Like, I kept trying it. I'll just try to make another one of these right now and see if it works again. Who knows? It wasn't on purpose that I did it even. I had my phone up, but the camera was on. And it was looking down at my corduroy pants that I had on. And I'm like, what's this? What is this? Why, it's my leg. It was that, but with my corduroy pants, okay? And it got almost 3,000 views. Meanwhile, the shorts that I put more energy into get fewer views. When I take Tiffany to the supermarket and I notice on the shelf of cookies that there's lots of cookies all around, but there's one spot there's no cookies on, and it's the kind of cookies I want, which is regular Chips Ahoy, not Chips Ahoy with this added or this kind of extra jar, just regular Chips Ahoy. So I put her on the little shelf and I have her say, "I can't have regular Chips Ahoy," and then I throw that up there among a bunch of ones that I spend some time editing. And actually, when I do involve the computer, I get it something on my phone, then I go to Google, take it up to Google Photos, bring it back to my computer, edit it here on the computer, put it back to Google Photos, put it back to my phone, and there's a bunch of like conversions and shit I gotta do in the process too, so it's a pain in the ass. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but I can't find any real linkage to production value. What really matters is what's random with shorts. You don't have any control over this. What thumb it picks. You can control the thumb. It makes it look like you control the thumb. You can click which thumb you want. You can even upload a custom thumb. But that's not the thumb that people see on the shorts feed. The thumb that people see on the shorts feed is the thumb that YouTube auto picks for you. Now, some of my hilarious ideas just don't start or exist in a particularly visually striking thing, right? Because I'm a word guy. But that's, too bad, word guy. You're going to have to do something visually striking to get people to pay attention to these shorts. And you're going to have to do nothing else, basically. You just say whatever, right? Like my leg, like that. I can make a short right now, I'd probably get 2,500 views. Just by like going like this. Oh my God! Is that a hat? I shit you not. I bet you that'll get like 2,000 views. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I know this is a rambling video. But I'm going to put those up and we'll see. I'll put both those up, okay? And we'll find out. So, just keep an eye out. If you watch this video, you got all the way to the end of this video. Thank you. You're a real fan. But check then. You probably won't mind checking just like a day from now and see if how those two videos I put up about my leg and the hat do. It obviously evokes thoughts of idiocracy, right? For anybody who's seen the movie, you know, it's like humanity's devolved to, they go to the movie theater to watch movies where the only thing that happens is a sequence of instances in which one person runs up and kicks another person in the balls. Like I saw in the shorts feed the other day something that had shit tons of millions of views, and it was a guy who'd walk by some people and make a fart noise. It's like, are you kidding me? That has like 40 million views? Oh. It, and of course, the problem with it was it wasn't funny at all. It's like, okay, I get that we can't immediately dismiss a notion just because of it being a horrible concept. Maybe he's got some twist or something. No, there's no twist. There's nothing interesting about it at all. It's horrible. There was another one that was equally stupid, but at least had a little twist to it, where the guy, he'd walk by like hot chicks basically, and then he'd make a motion like he was gonna slap their ass, but then he'd slap his own hand, and they'd like get all offended for a second, then realize that he hadn't hit them or touched them. So, but okay, so that's kind of a more creative idea, I guess, but I don't like the idea of involuntarily involving other people in your art like that. That's the thing that bugs me. Like, I wouldn't mind if it happened to me, but I don't like to see it done. And I wouldn't do it myself. I believe in transparency and consent and stuff, you know? It's like, I don't like hidden camera shit. I would like to have a sign on me that says, I am always being filmed. Any conversation you have with me will therefore be filmed. But, of course, you can't really go through life like that. I mean, I would. There's not much I would have any problem with making public. Like, it's like there's no part of my life that I don't want to be shown on the internet, except maybe going poo and taking a bath and having sex or something, maybe like just basic SI privacy things. But you know, that's not like there's no secrecy there. It's just being a cool FE person, you know, like. You probably don't want to see that, and I don't want to be seen as a creep, and so let's just not go there. Anyway, but that's the end of this video, and I guess I've talked myself out now. Sorry, Winston's mom. That wasn't you I was yelling at. That was everybody in the world, except myself. And Rachel, she gets a pass. You should get a pass too, but you didn't in this instance because I was being a little reactive. Because it just reminded me of the fact that we should have dealt with this like 20 years ago when I had already finished parsing out all the arguments about it. But, of course, the world doesn't say, hey, did we remember to check with Eric? Oh, sure it should. And we'd be a lot better off if it did. That's what Eric says anyway. But I will have to acknowledge that the world habitually does not check with me first. So I guess that's just something that all of you people need to change. Because, I can't do everything. I'm here saying things. I can't go find people to listen to me.